Lisa, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great. I love the place. It's really lovely. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I feel like this conversation is going to be something that's going to be really important for women as they're approaching menopause. Where do you feel like is the right place to start as we approach such a big topic?
I think it's looking at there's so much hype now about the menopause, obviously HRT, treatment, weight gain. It can be quite confusing for women. So I think it's just breaking it down and making it more specific to the women to be able to support them. I think at the moment it's very pro that people say, yeah, go straight on HRT, but it's not necessarily the be all and end all for all women. So I think it's just taking it back to basics and letting the woman think individually what's going to be right for her and what's not.
Yeah. So someone's approaching menopause, right, and they're thinking about how it's going to affect them and their body and their weight. What sort of things can they be doing to prepare?
I think if they initially think that they've got any symptoms, and I think the first symptoms that women are quite familiar with is like the night sweats, the insomnia. If they think that they are potentially linked to the menopause, that they could be in perimenopause, then go and see their GP because they can support them in the right way. But I think if it's anything that they are worried about when it's to do with their weight, if they think that their weight's not going in the right direction, or if they think it's to do with menopause, then it's looking at those things directly and how they can work to support themselves.
Is it quite common for a woman to put on weight during this period?
Yeah, it's very common. And again, it's the stigma of, oh, I've gone on HRT and I've gained the weight. It's got nothing to do with that. And there's so much scientific evidence to suggest that it's not just necessarily down to HRT. It's predominantly, obviously, middle-aged women tend to go through the menopause. So again, it's that point in a woman's life that things start slowing down. So metabolism starts slowing down, but also when we have the lack of estrogen. So if women are in perimenopause or in menopause, the estrogen levels are dropping, which is what's putting them into the menopause. So when the estrogen levels drop, it affects the metabolism, and it also displaces the fat. So if a woman was potentially carrying excess weight or fat on her hips, it could potentially now be presented in the mid part, and women tend to find that in the abdominal area, that's where their weight is. And it's not necessarily due to the HRT, it's just the mechanism of the body, like the metabolism slowing down, the estrogen. We need the estrogen to be able to keep our metabolism going. But if the estrogen reduces, then things start slowing down. So it's looking at the woman herself and thinking, gosh, I've got a bit of extra weight. Is it down to the menopause? Is it down to HRT? It's taking it back to basics and looking at it. And again, what we need to be mindful of is as we get older, not necessarily just women, but men as well, what worked for us like when we were in our 20s or our 30s and whatever diets won't work for us when we're older because things start slowing down. So we need to shift and change things and adapt.
You said HRT, so just wondering what is HRT?
So that's hormone replacement therapy. That's what, again, if they went and spoke to a GP, that's what they could potentially prescribe someone for menopausal symptoms. So this is, again, because depending on where the woman is within her menopausal journey, the GP can support them with what medication could reduce symptoms. Again, it's down to each individual woman. There's so many different types of HRT. It's not just a quick one-stop shop. It's a big discussion that needs to be spoken to with the right healthcare professional. This is, again, where I was saying, like where estrogen reduces down, women still need estrogen for their body to function. So if it is that their stores are becoming depleted as they start going through menopause, they need to make sure that they're having the right amounts of estrogen for them to be able to function properly.
So is menopause a lot about the different chemicals in your bodies rebalancing, which is then creating something that's different that's happening in the woman's body? That's why, therefore, HRT, hormone replacement therapy is one of the prescribed solutions. So maybe what does that do? Is it balance the hormones or?
Yeah, so for example, you could go through perimenopause where Things could be, as we said initially, like they could be starting to get symptoms of like night sweats and insomnia. If it is that they're starting to get those symptoms and then their menstrual periods are starting to become quite irregular, or they're going longer periods of time without their periods. So say, for example, they used to be like clockwork 28 days. They're now going for potentially 5 to 6 weeks before they have their next menstrual cycle. That's an indication that their estrogen's reducing, things are changing. So it's looking at that to see if they need an additional amount of estrogen to keep them functioning properly as such. Again, you could go into it in so much detail, but it's if women have obviously still got their ovaries, they then need progesterone as well. So it's all this that really needs looking into in great detail by the relevant healthcare professional to support the lady. But yeah, it's just a case of that, again, with an aging woman, things start slowing down, the estrogen level drops, and it has a big impact on the body.
Yeah, I can imagine. You said maybe when you work with people, it's about going back to basics. What does that mean? What would that look like?
So obviously I'm a dietitian, so we look about how we can support people with their eating, to prevent them from being deficient and to stop them from cutting out any food groups. We need to make sure that we have something from each food group so that we're making sure that our oral intake is nutritionally complete. So it would be a case if I had someone come into my clinic and they were saying, I really want to look at reducing my weight since I've like started perimenopause, or I'm in the menopause, my weight's starting to increase and it's really getting me down. I really want to work on it. So we would take it right back to basics and look at their diet history, what they're eating, and look at how we can make changes to support them. It would be like tailored specifically to their self. So we would look at habits, we would look at if they were eating regularly, if they were grazing, if they were going long periods of time without anything to eat, because all these have an impact on an individual. So it's really taking it back and looking at everything with a fine-tooth comb to see how we can support them and see how we can make the adaptations to promote the weight loss if that's what they're coming in for.
So what's changing? Earlier you said so woman's in her 20s and the diet she had in her 20s or 30s will no longer support her as she's going through later life and menopause. What's changed?
So obviously when we're younger, we don't necessarily need as much energy. We might need more something, so more protein rather than carbohydrates. It's their eating habits could be different. So again, as a youngster, they could be going long periods of time without anything to eat, which again isn't recommended, but that's how their lifestyle is. So it's then looking as we get older, it's looking at what they're having, and whether it's promoting and supporting their everyday life. Because things start slowing down, like the metabolism with the reduction of estrogen, and also just wear and tear on the body. It might be that someone might need more of one food group than another. So it's just the combination of the hormones, age, and lifestyle. So if someone in their 20s was loving going to the clubs, loving doing really active exercise that had an impact on the body, quite strenuous impact, later in life, we see the repercussions from our 20s and our 30s, our lifestyle, and what impact it has on the body. And then that's when we need to look to rectify or try to support what impact that's had on the body.
So where's the right place for someone to start when they're looking at their nutrition, looking at their diet, they're coming to see you, or is there like a common framework that you work through, or is it how do you kind of assess someone's needs of what their diet looks like?
So being a dietitian, we are governed by scientific evidence. So we can't recommend a faddy diet. We can't recommend what trend is on social media at the moment because there's no evidence to support that. We are evidence led, so we have to do research in scientific papers. If there's like a new diet that's come on, if there's not enough scientific evidence to support it, we can't recommend that because we are registered under HCPC, which is it's a governing body. So if I gave misinformation, I could have that registration taken away from me. So the way that dietitians work is we will get someone into their consultation. We will predominantly ask for a diet history beforehand, so it's not eaten into their consultation. We would ask for any medication that they're taking, because we can determine what medication they're on and whether it will have a conflict with what they're eating, and also whether it's working or not on their physical health. We can ask for bloods. So if they've had recent blood tests done, dietitians can interpret bloods. So we can see, especially nutritional bloods, if there's anything that's deranged. So for example, if they've got an iron deficiency, we could look and see, are they having the right foods to support that? If they are, then what other impact is potentially causing that? So we would look at that. We would look at weight trends. We would get a real background history of what the weights were like when they were younger. For example, if they wanted to lose weight, see what patterns there were, what family histories there are. So if there's anything like diabetes in the family, could this person need screening for diabetes? So we look at the whole bigger picture. Once we've established all that, and we've got a clearer understanding, we will then look at their diet. We will look through all the food groups. So obviously your carbohydrates, your protein, your dairy, your fats, fruits and vegetables, and we will look at all of them, and we will see where they're potentially lacking. If it is that they are lacking, we would give recommendations, and again, those recommendations are just on scientific evidence. We would then give suggestions, and we would always tailor the plan specifically to the individual. It's not a one size fits all, so you can't just give a book to someone like yourself. If you came in and said, oh, I want X, Y, Z, I can't just pick a book up from the shelf and say, there you go, just follow that. Because what's going to work for one person doesn't necessarily work for someone else. And again, I suppose it comes with when you get friends or your next door neighbour that says, oh yeah, follow this diet, this worked for me. It's not necessarily going to work for someone else. So it's looking at what they are having, looking what in contraindications are, so like what medications they're on, physical health, and then specifically tailoring it to them. And again, to support them. So if I said to have X amount of calories, or reduce it to support weight loss, it has to be realistic, because if I set these unrealistic goals, I know damn well that they're not going to be able to do it. So it's working with them to support them.
You mentioned calories there, which I know is a
big thing, yeah.
real hot potato in social media. So what's your view on calories? Is calories important?
Most definitely. And the way that I speak to my patients is see your body as food as fuel. So for example, a car needs fuel to drive from A to B. We need to be able to have the sufficient and right fuel to be able to function. Even if we are having, so for example, going back to the 20-year-old that is on a low carb diet as such, because she's spoken to her neighbour or something and the neighbour's felt great and she's followed that. We need carbohydrates for energy, we need carbohydrates for the brain to function, and we need the carbohydrates, the regular intake of carbohydrates, to be able to do exercising, to be able to do our full-time jobs. So if it is that we are cutting them out, it's going to have a detrimental impact on someone's physical health later down the line. So energy is fuel. So when someone says that they're on a low-calorie restrictive diet, red flags would raise to a dietitian, because we would be, why are you having so little calories? Because even though that individual is feeling great now, later on down the line, 20, 30 years time, that's when they could be seeing the impact that had on their body then.
Interesting. And you've mentioned carbs there. I don't know why, but carbs get a really bad press as well.
People, they've got bad press, haven't they? Really have, yeah. And again, it's low carbs, no carbs, keto. People are initially going to feel great. They're going to feel amazing. I've worked with patients before that have been, I could jump out of the bed. I struggled to get out of the bed before when my alarm went off. I was snoozing the alarm, but now I'm not having carbohydrates. I'm leaping out of bed 2 hours earlier. They're going to feel amazing beforehand, because obviously their bodies reducing that food group. So when we cut carbohydrates out, our body then flips to start burning fat. So then we start burning the fat and the other components, protein. So when we've got one less thing to burn, the body goes to an alternative. Carbohydrates release slowly in our body to release that slow amount of energy. When we haven't got that, when we're not eating that, we don't have to break that down. But again, later on in life, when we haven't got those carbohydrates, or if we get unwell, if we have a cold or the flu, we need the carbohydrates to give us our energy to fight it. So if we're not having them, people tend to find that they start to become quite ill, or they're taking longer to shift a cold because they're not having those carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates is predominantly for our brain to function and for our body to have that fuel.
Sounds like they're pretty critical to me.
They are. You can reduce them. We would not recommend to cut them out completely. As I say, it can have a detrimental impact on someone's body later in life. And again, they would feel amazing while they're doing it now, but later in life, it's another impact on the body that it has to deal with. We are a society, we've got Western diets, we do eat a higher content of carbohydrates. It's just making sure that you are having sufficient amount and the right. So if it is that carbohydrates are scary for people, it's looking back at it. As a dietitian, I would say go for your whole grains, and go for like your complex carbs. So looking at the different types of them. So if you're going for the ones that are whole grains, releasing the gut slower so that they're keeping you full longer, and they're also slowly releasing that energy for your brain and your body to function, rather than going for the sugary, the donuts, the cakes and the biscuits carbohydrates that are going to give you that spike and then that peak, which people associate carbohydrates with them.
Yeah.
Fruits and vegetables carbohydrates, but people, when they tend to cut up the complex carbs, they tend to go for more fruits and vegetables, which are still carbohydrates.
It's always interesting because carbs have got a bad reputation, but when you break that down and say a banana versus a donut, I think we instinctively know that a banana is a better thing for us to have, but a banana is a carb.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with having a banana? There's nothing wrong with having a banana. It's
Not
a great
at all.
thing to have.
Exactly. And then it's, again, as dietitians, we would look at that and we would say your banana is full of potassium, it's got plenty of vitamins and minerals in it to support your diet, whereas the donut has no nutritional value at all other than it's got high fat, high sugar. So it's just looking at that. And again, that's the dietitians everywhere will be like, we want to educate people to support them, because it's very quick for people to look on social media or listen to their neighbour and be like, oh yeah, I cut carbs out because, you know, I'm going to lose weight. But a dietitian would work with that individual to support them and say, please don't cut it out. Like, please go for the ones that have more nutritional value to support you.
But I can imagine some women would immediately be going, well, what, the rest of my life without chocolate? I don't want that. So how do we counter that?
It's everything in moderation. It really is. It's, again, if someone cuts the high fat, the cakes, the biscuits and the chocolate out, their mindset's going to be, like as you said, I want that. Why can't I have that? It's working with those patients and those clients that it's have that piece of chocolate, have that glass of wine, but having it in moderation so that it's not tipping you to the point where you're going to be gaining the weight with it, rather than trying to do what they initially came in for, was to try and reduce their weight.
So when a lady's going through menopause, how much is this then down to sort of poor food choices led by, you know, a change in their body, like that's leading to the weight gain? Is it the estrogen? So what's actually happening there? Is it are they hungrier? What's
With, again, everyone's individual. So someone could be hungrier because, as a dietitian, again, looking at that, why are they hungrier? What's changed? So is it that they've increased their exercise regime so that they're needing more fuel? Is that why they're hungrier? Or it could potentially be because they're not sleeping enough at night. Are they suffering with insomnia? And then therefore they're going for the high carb, the high sugary, the high fat foods to give them that sudden burst of energy. So everyone's individual. Some people might not have insomnia. Some people might not suffer with the fatigue. So then it's looking at, why are they hungrier? Is it that they're doing something completely different, or are they cutting food groups out or restricting their energy intake completely, that they're leaving themselves hungry all the time?
So what you said there, one of the important things is everything in moderation. So you're not saying cut out the chocolate, cut out the wine. You're just saying have it in moderation.
Dietitians are the biggest ones for cakes and chocolate and things like that. We have bad rep that we're like the food police, but no, if you ever came into an office full of dietitians, there's always cakes, there's always biscuits. Again, it's in moderation, because if you cut that out completely, your mindset's going to shift and you're depriving yourself of it. You're depriving yourself of that nice food, that luxury. It is all in moderation. If someone was having a takeaway 3 or 4 nights a week, that's not moderation. That is consistent. So we would suggest to that patient, why don't you scale it down a bit? Don't not have them, which is what people tend to do when they go on a diet. They tend to cut all that out. Have a takeaway, because then you're still having that treat. You've still got something to look forward to. You've got that reward because you've worked so hard during the week. Have that with a glass of wine with your partner or friends. Have that enjoyment, because people tend to take that enjoyment out of food. They tend to, it's very much all or nothing. It's very much, I'm just going to eat how I am because that's what I like, but I really want to either eat healthy, I want to eat clean, or I want to lose weight. And then it's none of that in the middle. It's complete restriction.
Yeah, my mum listens to this podcast.
Oh, did she?
I'm gonna mention kind of a thing that I see with her, where I'm gonna diet now, and the next time you see me in 3 months' time, I'm gonna be. That's always the conversation. And so what happens there is that there's an extreme diet. If you've not been dieting for a while, then suddenly there's an extreme diet, and then 3 weeks later, no longer on that diet. So and what's happening in the mindset there, which is, no, I'm dieting now, and then suddenly I want to achieve it, I've got to achieve it straight away. But actually, if you've been putting on weight, you've been putting it on for a really long period of time, over a period of time, where actually weight loss works in a very similar way.
Most definitely. And I think, again, we are a society that we want a quick fix.
Yeah.
So it's, if anyone could take like a quick tablet or something to make the weight, like all that weight that they've gained over X amount of months, years, if it happened by taking one tablet overnight, everyone would do it. It would be amazing. But it doesn't, and we do have to work at it. If we do that complete restriction, like as you said, it's not sustainable. People do it for 3 weeks and then they stop and they're like, oh, it's not working. I'm not seeing the weight shift on the scales. This isn't the right diet for me. I'm just going to go back to how I was. So not only have they got that element of they've done complete restriction, they've got now that element of failure as well, because they've not succeeded in that weight loss and they've not managed to sustain that diet. It's very much, again, everything in moderation. So eating in moderation and making some changes in moderation. Because if you're doing, for example, as we were saying, the energy, if someone's currently eating, say, 2,500 calories and they're thinking that they're going to reduce it to 1,800 calories, I think some people read things that if you can manage on like 900 calories to have the big weight shift, that's not sustainable. It's really not. So that person's going to feel hungry all the time. They're going to potentially feel irritable, tired, because they've jumped from having that amount of calories to like less than half. Their body's going to be in a fight or flight mode. Like, wow, what's just gone on? You've been giving me all this sufficient nutrition to keep going, but now you're restricting me. It's going to put a stress on the body, and it does lead to negative impacts unless it's sustainably done.
It's interesting because what you're saying, all food has got calories.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you just don't have that chocolate bar, or if you just reduce your food by just a tiny bit, then that could start to have a good lasting long-term impact. If you just stop putting sugar in your coffee, that will make a difference.
Yeah.
So actually what you're saying is that far more achievable, attainable things is actually not, what you're suggesting is not to go on a crash diet.
Yeah.
It's about finding some sustainable habits which you can live with for a really long period of time, as in you can live with for the rest of your life. So I suppose what you're saying really is to stop going into this 30-day, 90-day, 120-day mindset and actually think about long-term sustainable changes.
Yeah. Because again, looking at menopausal women, the shift that they're making now, this is going to be for the rest of their life. They are in the menopause, they've got these symptoms for the rest of their life now. So it's adopting that to be able to support them. And if you do the crash diet to lose that adipose tissue around the midriff, it's not going to work. It has to be sustainable. If you look at the calories, going back to them, so for example, wine or alcohol is 9 calories per gram. When you're looking at the carbohydrates and protein, they're both 4 calories per gram. So when you look at it and when you break it down like that, when people say they're cutting carbohydrates out to lose weight, there's no difference. So then you get these people that tend to adopt a higher protein diet to outweigh the carbohydrates. There's still exactly the same amount of energy. So it's just looking at that. With going back to like the chocolate, I always say to my patients, my clients, do it on a titration down. Don't cut it out dramatically. Slowly titrate it down. So if they were having half a bar of chocolate, try having 2 less squares or 2 less however, and then seeing how you can manage with that. And if it's giving you that positivity and it's not giving you that negative feedback as such, like the thoughts, like you're restricting yourself and you can sustain that, then work on that. But don't do it too much that it's going to be unsustainable and it's going to be leaving you with those negative thoughts.
It's definitely, so we were stressing, is just start slowly.
Yeah.
Instead of the normal comment.
Yeah. That's it.
Which is just, I'm all in now.
Yeah.
I've got to look great in 6 weeks, so that's when the holiday is.
I'm in the zone. That's it. I need to do it. Yeah. And again, like with these like liquid diets and all things like that, they're going to be cutting down on their energy so much that it's not sustainable. So yeah, it is just slowly tapering it down to support them. It's behaviour change. It's always making those changes to support you.
You mentioned an interesting topic there, which was alcohol being one in high calories. But what's the impact of alcohol for a woman in menopause?
So again, because things slow down, metabolism slows down, and I think there is scientific evidence as well to suggest that menopausal age women are drinking more than what they would have been doing potentially when they were in their 20s and their 30s, the way that obviously the world is changing. They're potentially having more calories. So people don't think twice about having a bottle of wine a night. When you think of that as like the calories, like 9 calories per gram, it's quite a lot. But then what we look at is the impact of having alcohol as well. So if they're having their friends around, their girly friends, and they're having some drinks, there's always going to be nibbles out. So then when you look at them potentially the night before just having a cup of tea and the odd biscuit or a piece of cake with their cup of tea, to a Friday night where they're having glasses of wine and nibbles with the girls, we've seen that with the drinking, it tends to, you lose your senses and your inhibitions and you tend to go for that high salt, high fat snack. So not only is it with the drinking, it's with the snacks and the eating as well that comes along with it.
Then what happens to sleep with the alcohol?
Yeah, again, that's affected. So if their sleep is affected from their hormonal level, if they're waking up with night sweats, again, the alcohol can cause night sweats, can raise people's temperature. It does affect your sleep. So it's having that negative impact the next day, which again, people could be going for that high energy, high fat food to help them get through the next day. So it's that vicious cycle.
It's a vicious cycle. I mean, no one eats a salad on a hangover.
No.
You're phoning up.
It doesn't cure it, does it?
No, you're immediately on Deliveroo. You're trying to get a KFC round. You're like, just get me over this terrible feeling that I have.
Yeah. And I think, again, when people are feeling a bit rubbish, they do tend to sometimes say, I'm going to have a glass of wine. It'll all feel better with a glass of wine. But not necessarily it's the impact afterwards. And again, if it is that they can have a glass of wine at night and that's fine, they can stop there, that's absolutely fine. We're always, with dietitians, we're always governed by recommended nutritional intake and units and things like that. So for alcohol, there is recommendations of units per men and women. So as long as they're sticking within those units and they're not exceeding them throughout the week, and again, it's in moderation. So some people think that they can keep their units till a Saturday night and have all their units in one go. That's not the way. You have to, the recommendation is to have 2 alcohol-free days a week to support, again, your physical, your liver, your kidneys, all your organs, but also your physical health as well.
Can you share just a guide on those units? Whether and what is it? What is a unit? So if I've got a pint of beer or a glass of wine in front of me, what does that look like?
They're all different. So I don't know specifics, but a glass of wine can be, say, 3 or 4 units. A pint of beer can be up to 6 units. It just depends. And you can look them up online. I'm sure the government website has got them. It used to be that men were allowed more units than women, and it's very much the same now. That the recommendation is that they have to have the same. I think it's either 14 or 15 units per week.
Mm.
But when you look at it in a glass of wine, that's not very much at all. That's not very many units a week at all.
No, years ago, my wife and I, just going through COVID, we were, enjoying just a bottle of wine a night. We worked out if we were drinking, let's just say we shared a bottle of wine, a couple, 2 or 3 nights a week, then it kind of got into 4. We worked out one week that we were like well in excess of the recommended. We had no idea. We were like 2 or 3, 4 times over it.
It's so easily done.
It's so easily done. Yeah.
And it's as you were saying, like the negative impact it has on it. So not only does it potentially make you feel tired, it affects your sleep, causes dehydration. You then make the not safest food choices the next day or that day. So it does have a negative impact on the body, not only to suggest your organs and they have to work overtime to flush the toxins out of the body. So again, it's everything in moderation.
And it's one of the challenges as well is that what I noticed was when we were drinking more is that sleep, our bodies weren't recovering, or my body wasn't recovering so well at night. You wake up 2 or 3 times a night, need to go to the toilet. I'm not sleeping all the way through anymore. And therefore, I feel like that had a knock-on effect to how I was feeling. And I was just like, oh God, I always feel terrible. I was like, God, why do I feel terrible all the time? And I think that the alcohol had a real impact on that.
It does, yeah. And dehydration is a big thing. It really is. Again, as a dietitian, we would work out specifically how much fluids you would need as an individual. None of this like have 3 to 4 litres a day. That's too dangerous. It's too much. So for someone, we would look at their weight and their age, and we would work out specific fluid intake for that individual. That is the recommendation for you to be able to function without running the risk of dehydration. So people that are dehydrated can potentially feel hungry as well. It's that mixed cue. So it's if you're drinking plenty and you're sticking within your recommendation, then that's perfect for your body to be hydrated. It doesn't dilute all your biochemistry as such within your body. So your electrolytes, when we do have too much, like the 3 to 4 litres that unfortunately social media recommends, it's diluting all your electrolytes, which can have an impact on the body.
That's interesting, isn't it? I've only recently started learning about electrolytes. Why are they important?
So they help the body to function. So you have them in your bloodstream, you have them in your organs. And again, you need all this combination of your electrolytes. You need your bloods to be stable. You need the right amount of energy. You need the right amount of vitamins and minerals for your body to function. Again, like that car to drive along the road nicely without any hiccups. If you start messing around with all this, you're causing an imbalance in the body. And that's when you can feel like how you did the next day after your drinking, how you can feel quite unwell, quite dysregulated. And unless you know specifically what is causing it, you just put it down to one thing. But when you're looking at if people are drinking too much or too much fluid, that they're diluting the electrolytes, that can potentially cause a big shift.
And what's the best way to then consume an electrolyte or electrolytes?
So again, it would be to reduce the amount that you're drinking. The only way that you can find out if your electrolytes are imbalanced would be through a blood test. And that would be if you were generally feeling that unwell, that you would go to your GP and you would be saying symptoms. The GP would be looking again at the bigger picture, and it would be, right, I need to screen for this. If it was that they came back and they were out of range, then it would be looking at what's potentially causing that. When it comes to sports athletes and they take the electrolytes and the gels and things like that, unless they know that they're deranged, there's no necessity to take them. You don't need to replace anything if it's out of range, because then you could run the risk of toxicity and giving yourself too much. Every time you give your body something that isn't enough for it to function, the body has to work overtime to bring it back to an equilibrium.
Wow, there's so much to be considered.
There is.
This is a real minefield for a woman going through this journey.
There is definitely, yeah.
Is there anything? What else haven't we covered? Which is really important, which we should talk about?
I think with women with menopause exercise as well, I think what we tend to see is that if it is that their weight starts to increase, they tend to become quite tired, fatigued. Then if the weight increases, they're not as mobile, their muscles start breaking down. And then once their muscles start breaking down, they're less active. Women tend to find that if they are prescribed HRT, they might start to feel a bit better. And then they think that they've gained the weight. But in turn, it might be that their mindset and their body is starting to shift to a more positive, that then they want to start doing the exercise, but they can't. And they feel like that they potentially gained the weight. It's a case of building back that muscle, building it back up again, and looking at what supports you. So again, when you were in your 20s and your 30s doing the treadmill or the high HIIT sessions, that's not going to work for a lady in her menopause age. So it's potentially doing walking, strengthening those muscles and strengthening the core by doing Pilates or yoga, doing mindfulness, so that whilst they're doing those exercises, they're giving something back to their self.
Do you often find that ladies, as they start to get a bit older, they stop exercising as much? So is that something they have to reignite later on?
Yeah, and if they've got the symptoms, if they are in perimenopause, menopause, they've got the symptoms of the muscle ache, the body ache, the heaviness, the brain fog. All of these have a big impact on exercise. The last thing you want to do is go and do an exercise class if you're feeling all these symptoms. So it's being kind to yourself. If you can't manage that exercise class that you were doing a week or 2 weeks ago, as long as you're doing something like a walk, chair aerobics, chair exercise, Pilates, that's doing something, and it's keeping building those muscles up. We just need to keep those muscles built up so that they don't deplete completely. So then you're having to start from baseline and then really having to do that harder workout as such to build it back up again.
It's really interesting because walking has unbelievable benefits and people don't realise how amazing walking can be for you, and it's so easy and so attainable.
Exactly, yeah.
Like, it really transformed my life, my training, everything else, when my PT just said, I just want you to walk. I was like, are you joking? I'm paying you all this money to tell me to go walk.
Yeah, it is. And I think people think that if they're not doing like weights, they're not doing a gym session, they're not exercising, they're not doing enough. But women need to listen to their bodies. If it is that it's taken them 3 or 4 days to recover from that exercise class they did, that's not ideal, that's not working, because it's counterproductive, because they're doing that exercise class and then they're having to recover 3 or 4 days down the line. Do that walking, take it back to basics and start again, like as I've said with the eating, take it back to basics and build it up. Don't go all or nothing, because it's going to have a negative effect. Start the walking. If you're doing 10 minutes or 20 minutes, build it up. Set yourself those realistic goals so that you can see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, rather than thinking, start walking and then saying, I'm going to run Race for Life in 6 months' time. It's not achievable. It's being kind to yourself.
So for someone who's not walking today, you're not doing that exercise, what's the best way of just starting?
I think if a walk as well for them is like too overwhelming, walk around the lounge, walk around the house, go up and down the stairs, start indoors, like walk in the garden where the weather's starting to get nice, so you're getting that fresh air. Do that. If it is that you can't focus on going out and going for a walk. Do it around the house, do it in the garden where you feel comfortable. If it's that you feel like you need to monitor something, then get yourself something that monitors your steps. Anything to help support you build that exercise journey up. I think we're very much, again, a society of, we want to be able to be running that marathon after 3 months of training, which is not achievable. And again, it's that going back to that failure. It's not being able to be achieved within that time frame. So I failed, I can't do it. It's being realistic and saying, I've not done anything for 6 months. I need to build it up. Let's do the stairs. Let's do a walk around the garden. We see very much that it takes months and months and months to build the muscles up. But if someone was unfortunately admitted into hospital, they can lose all that work that they've done within 2 weeks.
Wow.
So again, it's like with the diet, as you say, it's like we get that weight on and it goes on really quickly, but it takes us so much longer to lose it.
So it's interesting again, because what you're talking about is these are lifetime, forever habits.
Yeah.
So if you want to get the best out of your body, going through these difficult situations, there's no choice. You have to find the time and prioritize yourself to start either walking or doing something that is suitable for you.
Yeah, that's all it is it's setting out those realistic goals, because it is behavior change at the end of the day. There's no quick fix. Nothing's that amazing that it's going to fix everything overnight. We really need to work at it. To be able to sustain it and keep it within our lifestyle, we need to work at it. So it's setting those realistic goals so that you can make that change. And then once you've achieved that goal, set yourself another goal. But it's so that you're keeping that mindset, you're building confidence, again, around food, intuitively eating, and that exercise, so that you can keep it in your life. It is a complete lifestyle change. And the easier you embed it within your lifestyle, you will be able to keep it.
And for an optimal person, if they're looking to walk, how long should they be walking? How frequently should they be walking? If we were looking at the optimal, so someone knows, right, this is my goal, and in the next 6 months I'm going to try and get to this optimal. Maybe that's realistic. What does that look like?
Again, it's down to the individual. It's looking at the energy expenditure as well. So we need to look at what a person's eating. Are they eating enough to support how far they want to go? So it's working all alongside each other. So I think the government guidelines is, as long as people do 30 minutes 3 times a day, it might have changed. They do change quite frequently. The last I looked was 30 minutes 3 times a week. Sorry. Again, if that's not enough, or someone feels that they're a bit more energetic than that, then by all means, you just got to listen to your body. And it's listening to it to the point that you're not putting so much stress on your body that it's having to take a lot longer to recover. We're all individual. We all do different workouts, so it's just depending on you as an individual.
So you're really looking at consistency, which is really maybe every other day, and maybe you just start with a 5-minute walk.
Yeah.
Then the day after next, you do another 5-minute walk, and then a few days later, maybe you go for an 8-minute walk, and it's a 10-minute walk.
Yeah, and again, I think what we run the risk of, we say to ourselves, "Oh, I've done a 10-minute walk, I'm going to double it." And again, it's knowing how much of an impact that doubling that time is going to have on the body. So, like as you say, add it from 5 minutes to 8 minutes, just adding a couple of minutes on, or just going that little bit further and then turning back. It's just being kind to ourselves so that we're not putting that added stress, so that it takes us longer to recover.
The interesting thing is, what I learned from my personal trainer, and the reason he said walk is because before that I was doing a lot of running, and I started getting injured a lot. And he said there's 2 major problems you've got. One is you're getting injured because you're getting older. And the second is it's making you hungry. So he said the reason you need to walk is, 1, you're going to stop getting injured. 2, it's going to be great for fat loss. And 3, it's not going to make you hungry.
No.
So that was a really interesting, there's a real revelation to that. It was 2 or 3 years ago now. Real revelation to that, which was, wow, that was proper smart. Because you're right, when I'm running, I come back and then I eat back those calories because I'm hungry, because I'm tired, I'm fatigued. People don't realise that because of the energy balance. Yeah, I might have burned 500 calories, so I went for an hour, run for an hour or something, but then I ate back more later in the day because I was exhausted. But if you go for a half an hour walk, yes, there'll be some strain on the body, but I won't be hungry later.
No, and
Huge difference.
It's keeping active, isn't it? Like as you said, like you rightly said, he didn't tell you to pull back completely, because again, all that hard work you would have done would have just gone. It's keeping active and doing an alternative. So we tend to say as well, swimming works different muscles. It's taking that pressure off. Again, the impact on the body with the running in comparison to walking, it's looking at all that and how much pressure it puts on the body. So yeah, your PC was right to say, pull it back, do the walking. And again, it's counterproductive because you were going running, but then as you say, you were eating more when you came back to make up for your tiredness and your fatigue. So if something isn't working, it's having that mindset to say, this isn't working, I need to take it easy, and being okay with taking it easy rather than beating yourself up because you've been on this fitness journey that I'm failing if I'm walking rather than running.
Because that's also the mindset. Someone will go, I'm going to run a marathon because I want to lose weight. And then it's only when you've ran the marathon and you've realised, I put on weight. How have I started doing more exercise and I've put on weight? And it doesn't make sense. It's hard for you to compute and understand it. And actually, this is where it's so interesting that it's the simplest things that actually can make a really big difference. So it doesn't have to be this all or nothing, I'm going to go and do 4 HIIT sessions this week and do spinning and then et cetera, et cetera. It can actually be far gentler, calmer things to be doing.
Yeah, and again, it's like when it comes to January, isn't it? It's like everyone's joining the gym. They're all doing the HIIT sessions. They're all running the marathon. And again, they most probably haven't exercised since the January before. So it's being realistic and gradually introducing yourself into it. Again, going back to like what you said with the exercise with the marathon and the heaviness, what people don't realise as well is that muscle does weigh heavier than fat. And it's when you are exercising, your cells are pulling in more water to support your body. So all these physical aspects have a big impact on weight and how it can fluctuate.
What else in the sort of movement and exercise is really important for a woman to be considering at this point?
I think it's just listening to her body. If it is that she wakes up one day and she's really tired, and she set herself that goal of walking 10,000 steps, is being kind to herself and thinking, right, I did want to do the walk, but I can't because I'm feeling tired. Taking it back and doing a walk around the garden or a walk around the block. It's just listening to the body. If it is that you feel rubbish, you've had a bad night, your menopausal symptoms are quite heightened, listening to it and dealing with it at that time rather than trying to fight through it.
A lot of this is around experience and raising the education, isn't it? It's kind of like awareness of what are the right things to be doing.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's very focused on HRT at the moment and how it can support, but that's not the only treatment for menopause. It's lifestyle. Lifestyle has a big impact. And I think there are some people that unfortunately they can't take HRT due to their health, or just the fact that they don't want to take HRT because of all the negative information that's being provided on the news and social media. So again, if it is that they can't take that treatment, it is down to lifestyle, and it's not going to happen overnight. It has to be something that you work at. And if something you've done doesn't work, that's not that you failed. You take that out and then you try something else.
I think that's one of the challenges with looking at weight loss, looking at health and fitness. There's so much information. It's almost too much information out there to know what to do. And then people either procrastinate and do nothing, or the thing you try just isn't the thing that's right for you. God, I did some of the diets that I done years ago. I did paleo, I did keto, and everyone does it, and you try and be strict to it. 6 weeks in, 12 weeks in, I'm doing really well. Something happens at work, or and then suddenly you'll go off on a binge and ruined it all. And then you just have this, it's working, it's not working, it's working, it's not, and you can stay in that cycle for years.
It's very addictive. It is very addictive, and I think it's again, when you hear, like you say, you hear all these fatty diets around, it's 9 times out of 10 there's no scientific evidence to support them. So it's what's worked for one person doesn't necessarily work for another one. Again, it's coming down to that individual. Someone could feel amazing on like the keto diet, But then if someone else tries it, it's not going to work for them. It's that, oh, well, why hasn't it worked? You must be doing it wrong. We are in a society where it's very much like, oh, you've got to try this because this is the new thing. You need to try that. And people are very enthusiastic about what they've tried and what they've worked, not knowing that it doesn't necessarily support someone else.
One of the other issues that I see, and it's that, because what we're trying to talk about is optimizing your physical health and your lifestyle. But something else that I often see is more that someone's gone to work, they've had a difficult day, they get home, they're tired, they just want to binge and eat, they just want some comfort. And food brings people a lot of comfort during this time. I would sit down with my favourite film or Netflix and have a chocolate bar and some crisps. And it's like, well, hang on, that don't take that away from me. That's something I've worked all day for. It's the only thing I've got to look forward to. And maybe I can't have the wine as well. So it's like, some of this is kind of like into like emotional eating. Like, I feel this, therefore I deserve that. How can if I was in that cycle for a really long time years ago, and it was a really tough thing to break, how can someone approach that if they kind of find themselves into that emotional eating cycle?
I think it's, again, you could look for support with a dietitian. There are other therapists that can support you. If I had someone come into me with that they wanted to break that binge cycle as such, from what you've said then, it's a coping mechanism. Someone's stressed, they're feeling that they've had a rubbish day, so they're turning to food as their coping mechanism. So it's trying to find something to break that. Again, it's looking at the bigger picture, looking at why they're going to that, what's their trigger, and what joy it brings them. Because 9 times out of 10, people do feel worse after having that binging episode, and it's breaking it all down. Potentially it could have been trauma previous in life, so it could have been something that they've brought through their adult life. And again, it's putting those behaviour changes in place to support them. So, for example, if someone says, as soon as I get in and I've had a stressful day, I'm going to go for a glass of wine and a bag of crisps, but I really don't want this because I feel rubbish the next day, it's then putting something in place prior to them getting to that kitchen and getting that glass of wine to say, actually, no, I don't want this. I know that if I go for a walk around the block, that's going to make me feel a bit better. It's giving me the fresh air. It's giving me a chance to breathe, chance to de-stress, and then I can come back. So it's looking at all those different aspects of how they get to that binge, of how we can make those behaviour changes.
You mentioned an interesting word there, childhood and trauma, and that often can be one of the reasons why in later life people are using food as comfort. Can you talk to that a little bit? What might have happened there?
So working with, again, I work in an eating disorder speciality. We see a lot of people that come through that either it's from childhood trauma, they then go to coping for eating. It could be that they've not been as fortunate enough that they've not been given enough to eat from when they were younger, so food was restricted. It might have been difficult, families couldn't have afforded food, so they were hungry. It could have been that they had eating disorder or disordered eating that wasn't picked up. So unless that behaviour is dealt with, you're going to carry it on later in life. We normally look at all the traumas when we work in eating disorders. And again, you can work with someone and you can try and support them with their eating, but unless you deal with the traumas or what has caused them to have this relationship with food, it's never going to break that cycle.
So is this where someone should be looking at the psychology of it, or maybe looking at therapy, or how's the best way of approaching it if you are faced with emotional eating in some respects?
I would say to go to a registered nutritionist, so you can either have a registered nutritionist or a registered dietitian, someone that knows what impact food has on the body. Because again, if they are restricting completely, that necessarily doesn't only cause low weight, it causes dramatic amounts of stress on the body, resulting in potential admission into hospital. So it's working with an MDT as such. In eating disorders, they are so complex, like as you said, like the trauma, it's not just down to one healthcare professional. So I work in teams of psychiatrists, psychology, family therapists, nurses, general doctors, dietitians, and we would all work as an MDT to give that wraparound care to that person. It can't just be fixed with one person because there's so many different aspects. We see a lot of that some people could be admitted into hospital, and because they are really low weight for height, which again has a negative impact on the body, potentially causing detrimental effects, that they end up going in and just getting their weight brought up and then they're getting discharged. But that's never going to fix the problem, because again, the same as the menopause with behaviour, it's not working with them to support as to why they're there in that situation.
It's so much deeper. So much deeper than someone
It's
would
so
understand.
complex. It really is complex. And again, when you're working with someone that is really low weight, their cognitions are, the brain switches off. They can't comprehend any therapy. So trying to have a therapeutic intervention at such a low weight, it's not going to make as much of an impact as what it would be if they were at a healthier weight, when they can start making use of those tools and those skills that they're being provided to try and make that change.
I imagine, so when we came into this conversation, we were talking about that ladies that might put on weight.
Yeah.
And so some of that, it sounds like it's from the lifestyle, it's from the hormonal changes, but it also sounds like there could be those early trauma or something that's happened in childhood could be one of the reasons why that maybe the person knows they don't know or they don't remember. That could be one of the reasons why you're going to food, or they're going to food for comfort.
Yeah.
And I suppose it's trying to identify what that is.
Yeah, and unless they, rather than going online and looking at diets to try and support them, if it is that they've had that trauma, that's never going to be dealt with if they're just going online to find a diet. So it's trying to identify what the trauma is. As you say, it could have been parents divorced. And even though that we see it quite often now, the impact that that has on a young person that we see is so traumatic that you might find that a young person restricts what they're eating, and that's their coping mechanism. They go through all the processes of like their thoughts around, do they deserve food, and so many other emotions, that if that's not been dealt with from a young age and they go into adulthood, they might find that in their 20s and their 30s, they are restricting their eating and it's working well. But then when we get into our 30s and our 40s, with our shift in our hormones and our estrogen slowing everything down, that's not going to work, which is why women are potentially seeing that their weight's increasing, because it's not supporting their body. And then their body has been in that constant fight or flight mode, that now that they've got another shift in the body, it just doesn't work.
There's so much here. Is there anything we haven't covered yet, which is important?
There's so many things, and again, I think it's just down to the individual. Unless you, for example, if I had a lady that came to me and said, "I'm really resonating with what you've just said. Can I speak to you? Can I book a consultation?" It would be a case of booking her in and then looking at everything to see how we could support. Because it could be that once you start doing the psychological aspect of it, it then starts breaking down more things. And even women that have gone into adulthood from a young age that don't think that anything's caused any triggers, it's not until a healthcare professional that's got the skill set to look into it and say, has that ever caused any discomfort? And then once you start looking into that, they're like, oh yeah, I just brushed that off. But actually it has made an impact and it's caused all this potentially down the line. I think the big thing is just that there should be no restriction. There should be no disordered relationship with eating. It should be intuitively eating, listening to your body. So it is recognising those hunger cues. eat when you're hungry, don't feel guilty, and everything in moderation.
Interesting you say eat with intuition.
Mm.
Eat with intuition. That'd be another hot potato.
It would be, yes, that's another one, yeah. And again, there's so many different areas that, again, dietitians can support people. You could look at things like the diet culture and how much of a detrimental impact it has on a person's physical health unless they are supported professionally. There's so many areas, so many.
So with that said, if we were optimizing our health in that respect, then should we have intuition around our eating? Should we just know instinctively, oh, I'm hungry now.
Yeah.
I should be eating, or I should be eating X.
And if you think when we're younger, when we go back to like when we're 2 or 3, perhaps even a bit older, we intuitively eat. We ask our parents when we're hungry, we ask when we're thirsty, and we eat. There's no guilt. If we've overindulged and we've been to a birthday party and we've ate all like the foods, there's no guilt. It's embedded into us. So again, it's so many external factors that contribute to our thinking behaviour around food, that it's going back to how we ate when we were younger, without the guilt, without worrying whether we have a bit of chocolate, recognising the hunger cues, and having that positive relationship with food.
It's interesting you say that, because my son Logan's 4, and we had a family gathering at the weekend, and we gave him some ice cream, and there was a bit of a debate that we'd given him too much ice cream, and I because I know Logan. And I thought it was interesting because I just thought, let him have it for a second. Because he had maybe half of it and then went, I don't want any more. And he walked away. And the interesting thing about that was the child didn't just go and eat all of it. He stopped when he didn't want any more. Yeah. And it was ice cream, right? So he could have easily just carried on eating, but he had intuition within him to go, I'm full now, and went off and started playing. Yeah. So he didn't continue eating. But the interesting thing is, as adults, we do continue eating. Yeah. Like, I've never been able to, in my mind, reconcile why that is, which is, I've got this food in front of me, I'm going to eat the whole plate. Why? And I've never been able to reconcile quite why that is. Or, we just carry on eating when we know we're full, but, it does taste nice, I'll just keep going. Yeah.
And it's all the behaviours learned, all the behaviours. And again, as a dietitian, you could look at the family, the cycle. And again, I think when I was younger, it was very much, you can't leave your plate, you can't leave your food on your plate, because there's other things going on in the world that, that people don't have food and things like that. So it was all that was embedded into you as you grew up. It is all behaviour change. It is. And that's a good example of your son Logan, recognising that he doesn't need to finish it. He's got better things to do, go and play. He had what he needed. And he could leave that without the guilt, without needing to finish it. And that's how we were when we were younger. So that's a clear indication that all our behaviours are learnt as we go along.
And that's also the interesting thing, is because if I think back to growing up, parents would be saying, eat your dinner, eat all of your dinner.
And then you can have a pudding.
Eat. If you eat all of your dinner, you can have your pudding, you can have your treat. And I'll be honest, we're in that trap a little bit at the moment, but it's because you want them to eat. So obviously we were told that as well. So therefore there's also a thing of eat all of your dinner. Yeah. And then, so I've still got it in my mindset, which is eat all of the dinner. I still find it really hard not to eat the whole thing. I don't know whether that's psychological or not, but now slightly more mindful just to put less on the plate. So now I'm always going to finish it.
And that's just a little behaviour change that you could do. Do you know? It is all learned behaviours. A lot of it is. You've got the element of the trauma, if it is that it's a really negative relationship with food, but then all the other, like as you say, eat your food, is a behaviour that we've learned, and it's been instilled from family members, friends. And like as you say, putting less on your plate is a behaviour to support that.
So. It's really about becoming aware and questioning, and you are in control. But a lot of people feel like they're not in control. They feel like the food's there. I have this, this thing inside me. I want to go and eat the food. But it's kind of like you was beginning to allude to earlier, which is about putting a block, something in between, and for you to maybe question: do I really need that food right now? What's going on inside me? What's there?
And again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's one of those big behaviour changes. But again, it's encouraging someone to be mindful and present in that moment when they're eating. We are, again, I always go back to society. We're very much one that we eat on the move. We might eat in the car. I'm a bad one for it. If I'm busy in the morning, I'll eat my breakfast on the go. But it's actually taking that time to be mindful with what you're having, so it's registering that you're actually eating, and to enjoy the food. Food is for enjoyment. It shouldn't be a punishment. So yeah, it's just adapting.
Something I think about quite a lot as well is that, and this will be an unpopular view, but that's okay with me, which is, I think the food industry are also at fault here. So when we talk about good carbs, bad carbs, we're talking about, if we think about bad carbs, the ones with the high sugar content, high fat content, high salt, that hedonic set point, I think it is. That's what they try to achieve with crisps or Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realise chocolate's a great example of this. When was the last time you had one block of chocolate? Never. I don't remember ever having that. What people don't realise is that it's not your fault, because that food you're eating is addictive and it's designed to be addictive. The whole point around once you pop, you can't stop is the fact that those Pringles are addictive. I also eat all of the Pringles, right? I also eat all of the chocolate. And even if I just stop at 3, let's just say you have a bit, 20 minutes later, sneaking my way back in there to have some more.
Yeah.
So you're opening up something which is, it's not your fault, but you are consuming an addictive substance.
And there has been discussions in the past. I think Public Health have had multiple discussions with the government. We could be going really deep now, couldn't we? About keeping sugary sweets and that away from the till. There's been so many campaigns to try and draw back on what you've been saying, because it's marketing. It's very clever marketing that is getting people to consume more. I mean, if you think over the time when I was younger, the bars of chocolate were so much bigger than what they are now, but we could control it more than what we do now, because it's all the marketing that's supporting, buy this, buy that, eat this. Like, as you say, the Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. So in that mindset, it's, well, I don't need to stop, because it's saying once I pop, I can't stop. So yeah, it's very clever. It's very clever. But as I say, yeah, there's been ongoing campaigns. That could be another thing.
Well, I think it's important for people to realise, because it's also great for someone to realise it's not your fault.
No.
You are being marketed to, right, with an addictive substance, whatever that is. And alcohol's in the same place, sugar is in the same place, the crisps are.
And they're all at the right level, aren't they? It's all strategically done, isn't it?
Yeah, and billions and billions are invested a year into creating these foods. That very, very intelligent food scientists, where they kind of A/B test food, so therefore it'd be hyper palatable to you. So that's exactly the point, which is to make it so irresistible that you do continue eating. And then you also, I'm really craving that, I'm going to buy a couple more bars so I can have them at the weekend, so I have a treat. And that's exactly what you're feeding. You're feeding into is one of the channels.
And it's sort of like the promotions on it as well, isn't it? It's like when you get the buy 2 get 1 free and things like that. It's all drawing people in. It's very cleverly done. And then they do this, and then you get the impact of, and again, it's another topic, ultra processed foods. It's then that they draw people in, but then you've got other campaigners that say everything's ultra processed, which again, when you look at it, it's not. But that's another big area of marketing.
Yeah. But there's an interesting book written recently called Ultra Processed People, and it talks even about, one of the great examples on the front cover, there's a loaf of bread. Yeah. And everyone thinks, well, that's, it's brown bread, it's perfectly healthy. Pick it up and take it home and everything else. And what the book was trying to get to a point of, which is the reason this is an ultra processed food, an ultra processed food, is because it had 20, 30 plus ingredients in it. When really, actual bread from a baker has got 2 or 3 ingredients in it. And it was explaining that actually all of these extra preservatives, it's predominantly chemicals. It's not actually bread. But it's just a substance made to look like bread. Yeah. And that's the danger. People, it's so hard to know.
It is really hard to know. And I think, again, you could spend hours on it. It's saying that quite a large percentage of our food that's on shelves is ultra processed, but when you look at it, a lot of it's not. So there's a lot of healthy foods that fall into the bracket. So it's just distinguishing, and again, it's using your own mindset and your own skill set to know what is and what isn't. Going back to the loaf of bread, as you rightly say, and I always use this example, being a youngster again, you'd go down to the bakery, you'd get fresh baked loaf, and that would last potentially a day before it went rock hard. Now, when you go into a supermarket, they have these breads that last up to 7 days. Yes, they need to have preservatives put into them to last 7 days. That's supporting our lifestyle as such. It's supporting that not everyone can go down to the bakery every day and get a fresh loaf of bread. So it's working with the market, but now it's being tarnished as such with an ultra processed. So previously it was done to support people, but now people are looking more into the chemicals and the preservatives of it that don't have a positive impact on people's health. But then when you look at something like Weetabix, that is a really nutritious meal that's full of fibre and really great for the body and the bowels, that's classed as an ultra-processed food. So it's having your own knowledge as such, rather than being brainwashed by the media, I suppose, as such.
We go back to the same point we keep making, which is the fact it's just a total minefield for someone.
I think it's overwhelming and really daunting. Us as dietitians get quite frustrated with it because obviously a lot of these people that do come up with this don't have the skill set or the knowledge to give this information. But again, when you're on platforms and you're on the news, it's convincing because they've been allowed to go on the news to say it, yet it's not sound evidence and it's scaring people. I mean, you've got some people that can't afford to eat fresh foods. So they have to go for ultra processed foods. But when you have a ready meal, if you add it with something like vegetables, that's a sustainable meal. But people are being scared to buy that because it's an ultra processed food. It's a minefield.
So is there a basic guide or a way of you explaining kind of the better foods for people to be eating, which would help them through the menopause, but maybe even just more broadly would help them just with doing better, feeling better, the right sort of nutritional content? Is there, what sort of foods would that be?
There has been some evidence to suggest that the Mediterranean diet supports menopause. So that's all like your fresh fruits and vegetable, fish, oily fish. So the recommendation for oily fish is once or twice a week. So that's got omega-3 in, so that supports joints, nerves. Having plenty of protein support muscle, so cell repair and recovery. Having your healthy carbohydrates, so like your whole grains, your seeded breads, to support your digestive system, because again, with menopause, things start slowing down, so the digestive system can become a bit dysregulated as well. Just having a well-balanced diet so that you get all your nutrients from your oral intake. You get your fruits and vegetables provide vitamins and minerals. Dairy is a big one to have. So menopausal women need to make sure that they're having dairy or calcium regularly throughout the day, because when the estrogen levels drop, it starts breaking down the bones, because the bones need the estrogen to be able to support the bones with the calcium. So menopausal women can be quite at risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia. And again, if they were in their 20s and 30s and weren't really eating very well, they potentially weren't having enough dairy, calcium then. So then they're more prone at risk of having these when they're older. If they are at all concerned that they're not managing something from all these food groups, then it would be a case of taking a multivitamin, an A to Z multivitamin. You don't have to buy expensive ones. You can just buy one from a supermarket, and that would be giving them the confidence that if they weren't managing to eat something from all food groups, that could be supporting them. The only other main thing to suggest is vitamin D. So menopausal women need vitamin D. Everyone needs vitamin D. A daily supplement of 10 micrograms a day. We don't get enough sun to support vitamin D. But other than that, a well-balanced diet with exercise and listening to their body.
Isn't it amazing that some of this comes back to what our parents would always just tell us,
yeah.
which is just eat your
Eat
vegetables,
your greens.
eat your greens, eat your
Yeah,
vegetables,
yeah.
you know, have a bit of meat on your plate,
Mm.
which we all were told growing up by our
Yeah.
parents. But you know, as we get older, we have intellect and we get to make our decisions for ourselves. We choose
Yeah.
our own diet.
Yeah, I'm not having cabbage because I was made to eat it with loads of salt when I was younger. So yeah, it's just intuitively eating, as I say, just eating something from each food group, making sure that you support your physical health.
It's been really fascinating talking to you today. Thank you so much for your
you.
time.
Thank you. It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Well, before we close, if someone was interested in working with you, talking with you about kind of the changes that they're going through, what's the best way of reaching out and getting in contact?
So I have a website. It's at precisiondietetics.co.uk. We're also on Instagram at Precision Dietetics. I can be found on some platforms as well online. So Nutrition Resources, Go Private, and also Patient Access. So yeah, I'd be more than happy to support anyone on their nutrition journey.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much. I really appreciate
Thank
coming
you
in
so
today.
much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.